you need to make sure that in your organizations, you don't have leaders asking all the questions or leaders giving all the answers. You need to share the questioning power among the different people and the different roles. So we need to, for the organization to really be strong and curious and really all of those things that it can be when it's really great, we both need to be asking and answering. So I love what you said, because it's like you need to both recognize, what questions do others have for me at times, and they might not send them to me in Quest, but I can ask them, what question do you have? Or I can just be quiet and wait till a question comes. And also, what questions do I have for others?
Welcome to the Transformative Leader Podcast, where we talk about what's holding you back from being and showing up as the transformative leader that you already are. This is Amir Ganad, your host and the author of The Transformative Leader. My mission is to put people in touch with their greatness so they fulfill their unique purpose in the world. On this podcast, we do that by giving you an abundance of actionable insight that you can put to good use immediately in your personal and professional life. I'm committed that every episode will leave you compelled to boldly declare, courageously pursue, and abundantly achieve the extraordinary.
In this episode, I'm going to have a conversation with Dr. Marie Mathiesen. She is the CEO and co-founder of Quest.io. And that's Quest with a V, QVEST.io. And this is a tech startup in Copenhagen, Denmark, working with purpose-driven legacy organizations, both in the public and private sector. Marie's working experience spans from public radio to business development in a biotech multinational. She has a passion for the contradictions, paradoxes, and intersections where strategy meets practice, where tech meets human, and where you meet me. Marie has literature degrees from UC Berkeley and UPenn, plus a PhD in business from Copenhagen Business School. Marie and I met a few weeks ago through a mutual acquaintance, and we spent an hour or so on Zoom together, where I learned about her product and services. And I was so fascinated by the fact that even though the product and service that her company provides is basically a technology solution, she is so excited and driven by the reason this product really exists, which is very much in line with what I've seen really work in organizations. And that is to generate conversations, to get questions out and get them answered. And I've seen the magic of that happen within organizations, and using this product, Quest.io, really takes it to that next level. So I can't wait to dig into this with Marie on the sort of the what and the why and the how of Quest, and how she ended up, she and her co-founder ended up creating this particular solution. Well, Marie, it is fantastic to have you on the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I am so excited about Quest.io, and I want to get into that with you. And what I'm really excited about is when you and I first met and we spent an hour on Zoom and we sort of talked about the philosophy of what it's about. It was really, really interesting to me that even though you have a very sort of tangible solution that you provide, you were really excited about the why behind the what, if you will. So I want to get into the why and the how and the what of all of that with you. And I think it's going to be really beneficial for our listeners. But before we do that, why don't we talk about your background and how you came to this particular point in your career?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I am I'm one of those people who have done a lot of very different things because I always seem to be attracted to the adventure and the new things. So I'm originally from Denmark. I grew up in Denmark, and then I moved to Switzerland where my father lives. And there I met an American, and I moved to the States. So popping all around geographically, and I studied in the US. So this is sort of just a little bit of background of where I came from.
Yeah.
And then I was a literature buff. I did both a bachelor's and a master's degree in literature, and I really thought that I would have a career in the university teaching around literature. But I also found myself being super lonely when I was in graduate school doing literature. So instead, I decided, okay, let me try business. It's probably a little bit more collaborative. And I started working for a consultancy in San Francisco, where I worked with leadership development and strategy execution. And then at some point, now you get the long story, but then at some point, my husband wanted to move back to Denmark, and then we did that. And I did a PhD here in Denmark in business. So the switch between university and practitioner sort of business life and between literature and more practical applications of intellect is where I've been a lot. And I think that I sort of fell into Quest in a very lucky way. My old boss used to say that luck follows the hardworking or the eager. And I ran into my co-founder ran into her is probably not the right way to say it, but I was she was a consultant, and I was working at a biotech company where I had a role sort of as a chief of staff for one of the top executives, and we had to roll out strategy. And this comes back to the why question you asked before, but we had to roll out a new corporate strategy to the sales leadership team. And my job was to help make that happen, you know, as his right-hand woman to see what could we do to get this rollout facilitated. But at the same time, I had this, this nagging feeling that the way that we did strategy rollout, which was the way I had seen it in many other companies as a consultant and as a PhD student as well, this idea that you develop the strategy and then you tell people what the strategy is, and you do a lot of communication built around PowerPoints and meetings and so on. And then that's your rollout. You can almost hear it in the word, right? Rollout.
Yeah.
So, and the result of that was always that nothing really changed, or it changed really slowly, and it was always very difficult. And then you try to say, okay, well, maybe we need more change management, or maybe we need to communicate more. Maybe we just may need a better PowerPoint or a better strategy. But I started to have the suspicion that maybe those weren't really the problem. And I knew, because I knew the people that I worked with, that they certainly wanted the strategy. They were eager to do something. They were eager to perform better. So I was very curious about how to actually do this process of going from strategy to execution in a better way, in a more efficient way, or in a more inclusive and more inspiring way. And so I started thinking, how can we do something differently? And I was in this position. My boss was a very cool person who also was very open to new ideas and very open to doing things that were a little bit untraditional. So I started thinking maybe we should think cross-disciplinary. So if we start to look away from the way things have always been done and look for inspiration in other disciplines. And here I actually think that my literature background and so on helped me think outside of the box a little bit. And what I did is I called a woman that I had read some of her writing. She's a Danish philosopher, and she's a philosopher who thinks a lot about organizations. So that's also sort of an intersection or a cross or an in-between position. I called her and I explained my problem to her and said, I think that I need something different. I'm not quite sure what it is, but maybe you have some ideas. We had just a coffee. And she said, I have a little tool that I have built that lets people ask each other questions about an important topic. And I think that you can use that as part of your journey. And I said, oh, okay, let's try it. And that's how it all sort of started.
Wow. And that is a fascinating story. And the first time I heard that, I was thinking to myself, wow. I mean, I was floored when you said, look, we had this problem in terms of really rolling out, if you will, the strategy. And I went and talked to a philosopher. And I mean, that's just so fascinating to me that you would do that and you would have the wisdom to kind of look for the answer there, as opposed to, you know what, we're going to bring in another consultant to come up with another tool or something like that. And it's such a great thing that you did that, because it has led to what I really consider to be an innovative and a fabulous product and service. So it's really great. Yeah. And so can you, yeah, please go ahead.
No, I think that, yeah, I think that, you know, a lot of kudos goes to my old boss, that where, you know, he was the kind of person that if I say, you know, I met with a philosopher to discuss our strategy rollout, he wouldn't think that I was crazy or anything. So there is something there.
No, and it's really great. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think that a lot of us, we, you know, when we're stuck with something, if we are lucky enough to be stuck but willing to just sort of look up a little bit, I think that we can often find really cool solutions. You know, it's sort of the phone a friend moment, right? And the problem is, if we're stuck and we don't stop and think, okay, you know, what is my actual problem here? How is this normally, how do I normally solve this? Should I keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, or should I maybe try doing something different, and so on? So I think it was one of those moments where I forced myself to stop and say, hey, maybe there is a better way. Maybe we can do something different. And luckily we could.
No, it's really great. You know, it reminds me of, I used to do a lot of work with lean and that sort of methodology. And we used to work with these Japanese senseis that would come over. And one time we were troubleshooting a problem on a conveyor that used to have all kinds of jams all the time. So the guy comes over, he looks at the conveyor, and he says to us, a group of us, he says, have you ever, do you think about, and he was talking to us through an interpreter. He's like, think about nature. What do you think is happening here that happens in nature? And we're looking at this conveyor. We're like, nothing. I don't know. and the guy says, think about a fish. And we're thinking, okay. And anyway, so we couldn't figure it out, but he helped us out. It's like, look, you know, just think about a fish and its tail, how it sort of goes back and forth. What if you installed something right here that sort of shook the product just like a fish tail? And lo and behold, we went and did that, and immediately the entire problem went away. So, I mean, he was thinking more along at a higher level. I mean, just like you said, he's like, okay, look, the solutions are there in nature. Let's go find them and apply them.
That's beautiful.
So, yeah, so it's really great. But now, look, I know I'm excited about Quest, but I know our listeners may not know much about Quest. So could you give us kind of a brief description of what this product and service is? And then we can dive back into sort of the why and how it works, or why it works, actually.
Yeah, let me start with the name. So it's Quest, and the reason it's called Quest is both because it's built around questions, and also because when you're on a quest, you are on a journey with a purpose. So you might know your destination, but you're not necessarily entirely sure of how you will get there, or the exact path might be not clear yet. You know, the quest of the Holy Grail, that kind of quest.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in the name, and there's a strong reason for the name. And I think that the simplest way to think of Quest is maybe to think of it as the anti questionnaire, the anti-survey, because what happens in Quest, it's a digital product where you have a group of people and they ask each other questions or exchange questions and answers on a topic that's set by sort of an expedition leader, you know, like an admin that says, okay, this is what we will discuss. That could be something like the new corporate strategy. And then the people who are invited to this quest, they ask each other questions in the tool. And all of the questions and answers that get exchanged then get collected and shared with everyone who was part of it, and also with the admin. And then we have built, you know, a system, an admin panel and so on that crunches the qualitative and the quantitative data. So you get you get a network graph of the flow of the questions, so you can see who asks whom and so on. And you also get a bunch of other stuff that visualizes the data that's there. So you get insight into what are people actually talking about and what's important when it comes to this topic in this group at this time.
Yeah, and I think this is so significant to managing or leading any sort of transition, right? Because when I was first introduced to Quest, I was thinking immediately of some applications in organizational change or transition situations, because I think most of the time the culprit is that people have a lot of questions that they don't want to ask. And there are a lot of unanswered questions. Maybe I think my question is stupid. Maybe everybody knows. Maybe if I ask the question, it implies to somebody that I don't know and I should know, or whatever else. And so you're sort of facilitating with this process the conversation getting started, and imagine that everybody else also gets all these questions that they maybe didn't know they had answered within a short period of time. What you call a quest.
Yes, and it's important actually. There are a couple of things that are important for the process or the way that we have designed it, so that it works well. One is that when you ask a question in Quest, you must ask it of a specific person. So if you and I are part of a group that's questing and I want to send a question to you, then I write my question and I pick you as the recipient. And the reason for that is that then you have the one-to-one commitment. So you will get a notification that somebody asked you a question. You can't see that it was me unless I choose to write it. But you will know that somebody picked you because they care about your perspective. And then you write your answer and I get your answer that you wrote. So it's really, really important that while Quest is running, you don't see all the questions. You don't have a one-to-many communication during that time. You really only have one-to-one exchanges of questions and answers that then flow throughout the group, and then at the end everybody sees everything. So that also makes it feel safe, like you were saying, you know, maybe I have a question, maybe I'm unsure about this or this and that, but Quest creates a space where you should ask the question that you have, and there's not good questions and bad questions. There are just the question that's on your mind right now that you want to ask of one of your colleagues.
Yeah, and the fact that you can do that, do you have the option to ask the question anonymously or put your name on it, or is it always anonymous?
You can choose. So it's just a little text box where you put in your words that whatever you want to ask. And there isn't, if I want to write, you know, hi, Amir, I have this question for you, and so on and so forth, best Marie, then I can do that. But I can also just write, how do you think that our, 2021 strategy will affect your focus on leadership, or something like that, so, and then a question mark. And I think Quest is a tool that organizations sort of incorporate in their toolbox. And the more comfortable they become with Quest, the more natural it becomes. It becomes, oh, this is the space where we ask each other questions to sort of get things out on the table and to start thinking about this and to connect to each other on the important things. So in the beginning, maybe people are a little bit more careful and they sign themselves and so on. But then it starts to feel very natural and very, very safe. And it becomes very immediate in that sense.
Mm. And I know you also point out the distinctions between a survey, because a lot of people do surveys, right? I mean, we put out these questions and we get the answers, we tabulate them, we say, hey, these were the top 2 issues. And so on. So what is the distinction here, and how is Quest actually a better approach than a traditional survey?
First, I want to say that it's not always a better approach. I think it's a completely different method that there's room for in next to surveys or in addition to surveys. And I think that the problem with surveys, and I felt this really acutely when I was working in a big corporate, is that we use them for all kinds of things that they are not very good at. Because they're one of our only methods to getting a lot of data from a lot of people quickly. We tend to sort of misuse data at surveys. Sorry, I remember sitting in meetings talking about having more focus on the customer, and then having people say, "Oh, we'll just send our customers a survey and find out why they choose us." And I was sitting there thinking, that's never going to be the outcome of a survey, that we find out that, that's the wrong method for trying to obtain that goal. So, and one of the big problems with surveys that a lot of people forget, I think, is that once you ask a question, you have already determined the possible answers within that question. So if I say to you, what are you doing tonight? You cannot say dark blue grapes. Like, it's just not possible. Communication breaks down. And that means that whoever sends off the survey has and decides what the questions should be, has already decided what it's possible to get for knowledge, because the answers are already sort of inherent, or the answer possibilities are already inherent in the questions. There are times where that is perfect. If we want to know if people prefer this or that, or in that case, or we want to have a scale or things like that, then it's a really, really efficient and good way to engage. But there are times where we need to be more exploratory, and we need to recognize we don't even know what the right questions to ask are, where we need to be, I want to say, more humble to our own blind spots and to the inherent knowledge in, for example, in an organization. And that's where Quest is really a game changer, because the big difference is that the participants ask the questions. So the questions are not decided beforehand. It's only the topic that's decided. So you have a frame, a topic, and then everybody asks their own questions.
Thank you for listening to the Transformative Leader Podcast. If you like our content, you would love the new community we have created. On the Court is an exclusive community for leaders who are committed to expanding their influence and delivering breakthrough results personally and professionally. We offer leadership development content and coaching customized to your specific level of experience, available on demand on your computer or via our mobile app for you to consume at your pace. You will be part of a supportive community that is there to give you feedback and encouragement, or a nudge to get out of the stands and back on the court, all at a very affordable price. Learn more and sign up to join our community at onthecourtleadership.com today.
Yeah, so this is really a great distinction as well, right? Because a lot of times we don't know what we don't know, and we try to sort of guess what questions we want the answers to. But this way, you're sort of unleashing the entire organization on asking questions that we didn't even know were an issue. So yeah, it's really fascinating. And so here's a question for you, Marie. And I want to switch gears in just a moment for somebody who doesn't use Quest, and if they were to kind of do this in a really primitive way by hand or something like that. We'll get into the benefits of this, but I am still curious about Quest. So how long is a Quest?
Yeah. You decide. But typically it takes 5 days. So, but it doesn't take 5 days of consolidated time. It is a distributed asynchronous tool. So I start a quest and I invite my participants and so on. You do that on our platform, you set it up, and then everybody gets a prompt to ask a question, and they do that whenever they have time. So it fits in between, meetings, or when you're in a cab or whatever, you sort of, when things fit the schedule of the people who are part of the quest. And that was, for me, when I first did that, that was really one of the big selling points, that I could get a lot of people to engage a little bit. So you sort of have this big data thinking, it's not big data in the sense that we normally use it, but you could get everybody to just have one or two careful interactions, and together, taken as a whole, you have really, really high quality data on what's going on in the organization. Mm-hmm. Plus, you also, you start something good. We really believe that technology shapes us. And the way that we've designed Quest is to start good things, start people thinking and connecting to each other in organizations, because that's what's going to make organizations perform.
Yeah. And so let's talk about that a bit more. And we'll come back at the end of this episode, and we'll talk a little bit more about how folks can get a hold of Quest, find out more about it, and possibly, sign up to do it. I personally can't wait to engage one of my clients to actually use it, because I'm really fascinated by it. But let's just say that I'm listening to this podcast and I'm like, look, this sounds really good. I don't really want to go sign up for Quest, but I want to put a suggestion box, or I want to do this manually, or however I want to do it. Let's talk about what actually happens, whether you run a Quest or you do this manually. When what have you observed that happens in organizations as these questions become, more clear, and they get answered, and answers get shared, and things like that?
Yeah. Ultimately, it's a journey towards having a more curious and a more proactive and a more responsible organization. So our vision is to create responsible organizations. And when you get sort of really lofty about it, it's because we really believe that it's through having responsible organizations and communities that we will all make the world better. So when we come together in groups of humans that we call organizations, we organize ourselves together, we can do more together. And when we then have shaped those organizations into responsible communities, then we take responsibility for the problems that we face, both for understanding them, but also for solving them together. So I think that this understanding the question as sort of the first step on a ladder that ultimately leads to us being better at solving problems together is really important, because after the question unlocks this curiosity and openness for other perspectives, and that then answering questions and coming with solutions. And because a question always has, the opening and the closing in the answer. The answer is also very important. And having several solutions is then where you also start to solve problems. You can't just, ask questions all the time. You need to also consider some answers. So I think it's a journey that you go on, and I would say it's of course a lot easier with Quest because it's built in and it's tech and all of that, but you can certainly work a lot with these ideas just from, we have a little exercise we sometimes do with people where we say, tomorrow have this little piece of paper with you and note down all the questions that you get asked. Sometimes it ends up being a very, very, very long list, but as a way to sharpen our attention to questions. What do they do to us? Which ones do we ask? Which ones do our kids ask? Which ones do our colleagues ask? Which ones do the politicians ask? So on, so that we start to sort of get a heightened sense of the power of questions. Because if we can master that, we really believe that is, the first step on the ladder to becoming responsible in our communities and our organizations, and thus creating a better world.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, you obviously have a really nifty tool and you've done all the design and it's all in one place. But this point that you're making around really creating a responsible organization, organization that's really curious and leveraging the power of questions is so awesome on so many ways. And what comes to my mind is, first of all, if you are a person who has some answers, really sort of being in tune with questions, being intentional about not just answering the questions that people express, but perhaps you're in a conversation and you pick up on some body language or something, and you might say, what is the one question you have about this, or something, being curious about people's questions. And the other thing is that, causing people to be intentional about getting in touch with their own questions rather than brushing it to the side. Because in the absence of that curiosity, I've seen this myself in organizations, you can throw all kinds of information at people, but if there's no real interest and curiosity, it just falls flat. Whereas if you kind of put people in a position where they're intentional about really thinking about what questions do I have, then you create that curiosity, and they are then pulling the answer to themselves.
Yes, yes, I think that's true. And I think that another key component that you make me think of is that you need to make sure that in your organizations you don't have leaders asking all the questions or leaders giving all the answers. You need to share the questioning power among the different people and the different roles. So we need to, for the organization to really be strong and curious and really all of those things that it can be when it's really great, we both need to be asking and answering. So I love what you said, because it's like you need to both recognize, what questions do others have for me at times, and they might not send them to me in Quest, but I can ask them, what question do you have? Or I can just be quiet and wait till a question comes. And also, what questions do I have for others, and asking those, and then and considering it and respecting it. I think that's really, really important. So then it goes into culture, right? Then you're building a culture that leads to good things.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of culture, I really believe, this is my own personal belief, that culture is both shaped and created by language, and it can be measured by kind of listening to the language. So if I go into an organization, I can listen to the language and immediately tell what sort of culture they have. And then, interestingly, whatever language they're using continues to feed it, and it's either a vicious cycle, sort of a downward cycle, or a virtuous cycle that is growing and that sort of thing. And I would have to imagine that this creating a culture of questions constantly being asked and answered, has got to contribute to a healthy culture.
Yes, and I think that you can also, you get an image, you get data on what culture do you have, because you can see the words that people use and you can see how they communicate with each other. If you quest with a group of lawyers, and you quest with a group of cleaning professionals, or somebody who has a more, practical everyday, they don't have a lot of time, they don't work with words every day, you get very, very different data in Quest. You get different length of answers and questions, you get different words, you get all of that. But it really is because the culture of the organization and the communication styles and so on comes out in Quest. And most of the time, it's very positive and very constructive, because when you have to answer your colleagues, but you've gotten a question that they've spent their precious questioning opportunity to ask you, and then you have to write an answer back, but you don't know who asked you. Then you write back in a very respectful tone because you don't know who it is, so you can't assume that they know a bunch of things. I can't say, oh, as you already know, plans for 2025 have already been set, because I don't know what you know. So therefore we often see a very respectful tone. But I will also say, if you have things in your culture that are counterproductive, you can see it and you can address it. You can say, oh, I see a tendency to us talking about this in this way, or using this language, or framing it this way. And you can actually go in and then really work with it. Sometimes people say, oh, I don't want to use Quest because what if things come up that I don't know how to deal with, or that I wish wasn't there? Then our our answer is always, well, nothing is going to come up that isn't already present.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you'd prefer not to know about it, that's a different story. You've got to really deal with yourself and why that is. But if the problem is out there, then knowing about it is definitely the first step. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go solve every problem immediately. It could be that it gives you the power to at least communicate. Like, look, these are the highest priorities at this time, and we're going to get to X, Y, and Z on this timing, but at least you've put those people's mind at ease that you recognize it,
yes.
that it exists. Yeah,
exactly. And I think we do this thing where the quest is assigned in a way so at the end everybody sees the output from the quest, so it becomes very visible that your priorities and your focus and the conversations that you have been having in Quest is not the whole, that you are part of a larger whole that has many, many other perspectives and many, many other inputs. So we often find that people are actually, and also just because we all understand that when we're part of a group and we have to prioritize, or we have to focus, or we have to decide out of many different initiatives which ones we should be focusing on, then it's actually very clear to people, oh, okay, I see now that even though the legal aspect is the most important thing to me, I see all of these other things are also going on, and therefore, of course, I understand if this is not, at the top of it. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, and I know you've got several case studies on your website. I'm wondering, and I don't know if you have any favorites, but I wonder if you could just kind of highlight one of those for us, like the sort of the before and after, and what are the benefits that the client got, without obviously going into anything confidential.
No, I think that it's always, to me, magical when you see over time a sustained improvement or change that our customers really want, when they have a vision for how they want to shape their organization, and Quest then becomes part of them succeeding with that. They want to be more high performing, or more curious, or more collaborative, or whatever it is, and then they use Quest for a while regularly, and then they can actually measure and see that is the case. So we have one organization, it's a public organization, mm-hmm. that wanted to do a very inclusive strategy process, because they had to make some very fundamental changes, and they wanted to do it in a way where they included their employees and the perspectives of their employees in building this new organization, both in mapping it out, how should it be, and designing it, and so on. So they ran a process over a half a year where they did several quests in the same population of people on different topics that then related to the strategy. And then what they could see is that from the sort of beginning till half a year later, they saw a 46% increase in the connectivity between the different groups that they wanted to connect further. And this then connected to what they wanted to do strategically. So it was sort of like they were becoming the organization, in shaping the organization and the strategy, they were becoming the organization that they need to be. And when that we can track these things, you get all kinds of scores and so on, we call them key behavioral indicators, so KBI, you get out of quests, so you can see and compare across quests and so on. And those are great, and it's lovely to see the numbers go in the right direction. But I think the things that sort of make my heart somersault a little bit is when we talk to the client and they explain to us that they feel the change that Quest has been part of making in the organization, that they see colleagues really reaching out to each other, collaborating on problems, being more curious, that we have actually created sort of a change that goes beyond just the report and the numbers. And they've done it, of course, but they've used our little tool to do it. And those are my favorite stories.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I think that human element of it, every transformation that I've personally been involved in, I can tell you I don't necessarily remember all the numbers, even though I know when they were going in the wrong direction and when they were going in the right direction. But what I do remember is like literally the faces of the people when they had that aha moment, or when they restored a relationship in their life and they attributed it to the conversations that we had, or they came together as a team. And it's like, man, that's where the magic happens, and it's all worth it then.
Yeah, that reminds me of a story I'm just going to share with you. Yeah. We my co-founder did a TED Talk here in Copenhagen at the Frederiksberg TEDx event, and a person came up to her there and said, we ran Quest in my organization, and the craziest thing happened. So it was a large organization distributed all over Denmark, and there was and it's comprised of sort of main offices and then factories and people sort of on the ground. And a person in an office had thought, I want to ask somebody who is actually in the factory working with this, because I want to know their perspective on this. So they send their question out, which I don't know what it is or anything, but they sent their question out. They found somebody from the list that was out in a factory, and they didn't know that person, but they could see from their role that they were relevant. So they sent them the question. And in the factory, you can't be questing. You quest when you're off the assembly line kind of thing. So this person, on their little break, they sat down and they wrote a thorough response to this question. And when that question then got back to the headquarters, to the person who asked it, or the answer got back, the person was so floored by the insight, and both by the knowledge in the answer, but also understood how little they understood the reality of the factory floor. And they were making the decisions, but they didn't really understand what it was like out on the floor with the machines and so on, making everything work. And as a result, the person was like, called the person they had asked, and they said, it was me who asked you that question. Can we talk some more? And they talked some more. And in the end, the factory person who was asked the question got a new job, because they realized, we need this kind of knowledge so bad. We need to lift you out of the factory and bring you in closer, because this is how we will actually succeed.
That is beautiful. That's a beautiful story. That's amazing. And just the power of engaging in conversations. So I tell you what, this is, again, a product and a service that is meeting a need that I've known about for many years, in terms of generating the right kinds of conversations. And I want to encourage all of our listeners to find out more about it. And we'll put the links in the notes, of course. But Marie, what is the best way for our listeners to find out more about Quest?
You can go to our website, and it's Quest with a V, so QVEST.io. And, that's also the first part of question, so Quest.io. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. That's my preferred connection to professional connections. I'm Marie Mathiesen, and should be very easy to find, and I'm always happy to connect. And we have an ebook, and we have other sort of resources. We have a blog. We have other resources available if you want to learn more about the philosophy behind. My co-founder Pia's TED Talk is also magnificent. So there are ways to dive into the thinking around this. If you're curious about questions, and I think you were saying leveraging the power of questions, if that's a journey you want to go on, then we certainly have resources, and then maybe Quest becomes relevant, but it doesn't need to be where you start.
Yeah, no, it's really great. As we have been talking even before our interview here, is like, look, this is not about pushing a certain product, certainly. And as long as people embrace this idea, they can go do some things on their own. But wow, you guys really have a great product here. And your ebook, I'm looking at it right now, is full of awesome, tips and models and thoughts. That ebook in itself brings a lot of really great perspective. And I, again, hope that our listeners will check it out and find out more about Quest. So, Marie, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And thank you so much for spending this time with us.
It has been great. My pleasure.
You've been listening to the Transformative Leader Podcast with Amir Ganad. If you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe to the show so that you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed this episode, we'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment, rating, or review wherever you listen to podcasts. And be sure to share the show with others who would benefit from our content. Don't forget to visit our website at theganadgroup.com to learn more about the ways in which we guide leaders in creating extraordinary cultures that deliver breakthrough results and unprecedented fulfillment. While you're there, you can download our free ebook and audio series on making your culture transformation stick at theganadgroup.com/culture-ebook. As always, feel free to drop me a line at amir@theganadgroup.com and connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Until next time, may you boldly declare, courageously pursue, and